How you going, guys? Dean from Blog for the Blood God here. I know it's a little bit off script, but I've got an Emperor's Children list that I want to share with you guys today. So it's not my traditional Khorne, and it's not my traditional demons, world eaters, that sort of stuff. I'm going for something a little bit different. And this is for an event that's coming up this weekend called Uprising, which I believe is currently slated to be the largest event. It's the largest event for 2021, but it's been the largest event for probably the last 12 months, just due to COVID restrictions and a lot of events being shut down. I think they've got 120 to 130 players attending this event, so it's quite large. And it's going to be the Australian ITC Championships for the 2020 season. So granted, there wasn't a massive amount of events in the 2020 season, so it's largely symbolic at this point. But it is still going to be quite a large event, and given that a lot of the rest of the world is currently in lockdowns, it's definitely the biggest thing happening right now in global 40k. So very exciting. It's going to be. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a ripper event. And I just wanted to run you guys through the list that I'm running, because I'm pretty happy with it. I sort of churned it out last minute because there was some unfortunate TO rulings that didn't go in my favour. Well, they did, and then their TOs changed their minds last minute, which sort of put me in a position where I had to pull something out of my arse, because I'd been building towards a different list that was basically using the Charybdis Assault Clause. And I asked the TO, what their ruling is, because currently that unit's unplayable, and most people would agree it's an obvious oversight. So the TO said, yeah, no worries. So I started building towards that list, and then last minute they changed their mind. So unfortunately that put me back in the position, back on the drawing board, but I'm actually happier with the list that I've landed on than I was with the Charybdis list. So it's one of those sort of silver linings, blessing in disguise situations where I look back on when I first found out that they had changed their mind last minute and I had a couple of days to put a list together. I was really pissed off. I was really upset. But now I look back on it and I'm like, I shouldn't have got so upset, because in the end I ended up in a better place. So that's just a little bit of my experience on that. Anyway, onto the list, eh? So it's a Emperor's Children Battalion. And I'll go through some of the tricks that I have up my sleeve. I won't give them all away. I won't give away the whole shop, but I'll give away some of them just so you have a bit of an idea on why I've taken the units that I've taken. So first up, we've got a Sorcerer with a jump pack, Emperor's Children, and then another Sorcerer with a jump pack. He's my Warlord. Warlord trait is, I can't remember what it's called, but basically the one guy's got a Warlord trait and a relic, which gives him +1 strength and attack on the charge, and also reroll hits and wounds in combat. So basically both of them just turn him from a plebby sorcerer into a mini beatstick. Still not that great, because he still only gets a few attacks, but it just means he's no slouch in combat. And that's mainly because all of the Emperor's Children relics are kind of, they're great if you're going to put them on like a Demon Prince or something like that, if you want to invest those points. And perhaps reviewing this list, maybe I could have put them on a Demon Prince, but I decided to go with the Sorcerer just because I wanted the Psychic powers. Speaking of Psychic powers, one of them has Warp Time and Prescience, and then the other one has Death Hex and Delightful Agonies. So I'll explain a little bit on what my plans are with those when I get to the other units. So being a battalion, we've got to have 3 troops. So you can see here we've got a unit of 30 Noise Marines. And these are some Noise Marines that I converted out of some old CSM that I bought in a huge lot off Buy Swap Sell, where I got them for $1 each. And then I was able to just use my bits box to convert their bolt guns into what I'm using as sonic blasters. Just by giving them a demon face and like a cable, so it's like a power cord, and then just doing some jiggy effects on the power cord to make it look sort of like, some kind of energy flowing through it. And given that Noise Marines have the same defensive profile as a standard Marine, there's no no WYSIWYG issues there. And then these guys up here, they're my Blastmasters, which are made out of a heavy bolter with, again, a different gargoyle face and that same hose sort of deal. So, yeah, that's the Big Noise Marine unit. All Sonic Blasters, 2 Blastmasters, and a Icon of XS in the unit, which I'll explain those later as well. So that's one Troops choice. Then my other Troops choice is a unit of 10 Cultists, just basic. And then over here we have another unit of 10 Cultists. So that's just to fill out the battalion, gives me makes it so that I can dodge the CP cost for the detachment, and it also means that I have some plebby units to sit back on objectives, and they don't need to contribute, they can just hold things, maybe do some actions, depending on how I decide to go with my secondaries. So yeah, that's the core of the force, if you will. Now let's get into the meat. So we've got 3 units of CSM Terminators, all with lightning claws. Every model has a lightning claw. And because I was pulling these out of my bits box last minute, some of them I've just converted out of a Power Fist, and they're actually the tongs off a fork. I bought plastic forks and I cut the tips off them and stuck them to the back of a Power Fist. And obviously the paint job on them is not amazing because I had to smash it out in a very small window of time, but ticks the boxes. So yeah, all of them have lightning claws, and then each unit has a various ranged weapons. So I'll run through those. So there's 10 there, then we've got another 10 in the center here, and then another 10 off to the side. And then basically this big central unit is all just combi bolters. All of them are just combi bolters. Then the 2 units on the flanks have 2 Reaper autocannons in each, which I think I've positioned them wrong because I've put my Reaper autocannons here. Anyway, I'll fix that up. But basically there's one unit that's all combi bolters, and then the other 2 units have 2 Reaper autocannons. One of them has 5 combi melters, and then the other one has 6 combi melters. And then basically, the reason I've gone with the combi melters, a lot of people question that, why didn't I go with combi plasma? Because the whole Slaneshi Terminator bombs, the standard sort of archetype is combi plasma. But my thought was, with things like Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Space Marine Dreadnoughts all having neg 1 incoming damage, and Grey Knights Paladins and stuff like that having the neg 1 incoming damage, I sort of thought that 2 damage point, to me, isn't ideal. I think 3 damage or higher is where you realistically want to be. And then when you also think you've got Primaris units with maybe with a 6-up Feel No Pain from an Apothecary, and if you're only doing 2 damage, that means they get 2 chances to roll a 6, and if they roll their 6, you now need to waste another shot to kill them, which is really unfortunate. So I was like, whereas the Melter Guns, sure, they can spike low and roll 1, but if you're neg 1 damage, rolling 1 doesn't matter. If I roll a 2, then it's the same as the Plasma, and if I roll anything better, it's actually better than the Plasma. Now, obviously, the Plasma gets more shots, which is another valid argument for the Plasma, but then there's the other drawback is that I only have the 2 HQs, I don't have any access to reroll 1s, and I really don't want to just drop the Terminators down and then just have half of them evaporate to an unlucky roll where I roll a fuck ton of 1s. So I decided that for me, I'm playing these units hyper aggressively, so the range of the Melter Guns isn't that big of a deal, and the ability for them to spike really high on those damage rolls is very attractive to me. It also means that if people try to screen me out with Rhinos or, Dread Knights or, Giant Keeper of Secrets and fucking that sort of stuff, or whether they try to do it with, just any of that sort of really hearty, really hard to kill things, I want to be able to just reliably just go, well, cool, I've got 6 fucking Melter Guns in this squad and they're going to shoot twice, so it's 12 Melter Gun shots. It's going to fuck you up. So That's sort of the goal behind the melter guns, and it also just means the units are so scary. Nobody wants to. You can't just confidently go, I'm going to put some bullshit out front to screen you. You have to go, well, whatever I put out as a screen is gonna fucking die. Yeah, so that's the 3 Terminator units, and each one of them also has an icon of excess in the unit. And then finally, to round it out, we've got a unit of 9 bikes at the back here, all with chainswords. And then there's 2 guys up the front with melter guns and a champion with a combi melter. And this is obviously the same principle behind the melter guns, same logic I used with the Terminators. Just it's those 3 melter guns could, potentially go in and shoot twice and gank a rhino, whereas the plasma gun's less likely to do that. The toughness 8, the strength 8, is also relevant over the strength 7 of the plasma. And also the high AP value is really good, because the other thing that I was really worried about with screening was something like a Thunderhammer Storm Shield Terminator in cover can be really fucking hard to deal with. Like, bolters aren't getting through it, plasma's struggling to get through it, whereas the melter guns are just they're going to push you to your invulnerable save, and if you fail that invulnerable save, I'm going to D6 damage you and probably kill you, Instead of being like, oh, you're a 3-wound Terminator and I've got 2 damage on my plasma, so not only do I need to push through your save, which is harder because I don't have the AP, but I also need to get 2 fucking shots through just to kill 1 guy. It's just not as good, so I've gone with the melter for that reason. The 9 bikers, so they're all chainswords, they've all got the guns, and they've also got an icon of excess. So that's more or less the list, and how it all comes together. So now a few of the tricks that this list can do is basically the standard template for how I'm going to play the list. Obviously, I'll differ this up depending on the mission, depending on the opponent, depending on all kinds of shit. But the standard format will be all 3 Terminator units go into Deep Strike, because they are all together come in at under 1,000 points. And then basically you've got the biker unit and the noise marine unit and the 2 cultist units. They all try to deploy somewhere relatively safe, and the 2 characters deploy either in with the bikes or in with the noise marines, where they're safe and protected. So it's actually quite a small army to try and hide. So I'm hoping that with considerable amounts of these L-shaped ruins, I should be fine hiding that. And then basically on my first turn, the noise marines move out, the bikes move out. They can go up they can either go onto an objective, like the bikes can move onto an objective, then the noise marines warp time out onto an objective. So I've got the 2 central objectives, cultists holding any backfield objectives that I have. And then the shooting phase starts, and the idea is that they will shoot anything that's going to be either a threat to the Terminators or screen the Terminators. So if they've put things out in front to try to screen me so that my Terminators can't hit the juicy targets, that's what the noise marines and the bikes are there to dig out. There's a little bit of play with the bikes and the noise marines in the way that I could warp time the bikes and then go in for a T1 charge, because they have their 14-inch move and then they move again, so they're 28 inches up the board. Which is why I've put jump packs on the sorcerers, because the jump pack would have to keep up. That's a slightly more risky play because it risks leaving the sorcerer exposed, and it also can be a bit of a suicide run on the bikes. Whereas I'm probably more likely to just move the bikes onto a central objective and then warp time the noise marines onto the other central objective. One of the things I've done is I've spent 2 CP pre-game, which is on my list, for the noise marines to be toughness 5, which basically means that when I deploy, I've got the bikes and the noise marines are all toughness 5. So the only thing in my army that's a valid target that's not toughness 5 with a 3-up armor save is cultists, which people are probably more or less going to ignore, but we'll see. So yeah, that's sort of the idea with the noise marines and then the bikes, and then basically one of them will shoot twice. So if there's a good threat for the noise marines, they'll fire all of their guns twice and just fucking destroy things. This unit puts out, there's 20 guys there, 3 shots each. So it puts out 60 shots, and then it shoots twice for 2 CP, so it puts out 120 shots, with prescience on them, I can get them hitting on 2s. And then there's a stratagem for them that makes them strength 5, 2 damage. So against Marines, it would be wounding on 3s, and each shot kills someone. And then also with Veterans of the Long War, it can be wounding on 2s. So this unit can put out 120 shots that hit on 2s, wound on 2s against Space Marines and do 2 damage. This is also part of why I went with the melter guns, because with that much 2 damage shooting, I wanted to diversify my offensive profile so that I can use these guys to hit the things where 2 damage is valuable, and anything where you want more than 2 damage, the Terminators come in, and anything where you only want a single damage, that's where the Bikers come in with their bolters. So I've got I've got 1 damage, I've got 2 damage, and then I've got D6 damage. So yeah, that Noise Marine unit goes fucking absolutely bananas in the shooting phase. And then the bikes can move up and do their thing. Or alternatively, if there's, say I'm versing like, I don't know, like a Sisters of Battle Army or something like that, where the 2 damage isn't as relevant, I don't need to spend the CP on that, or then maybe they've got everything hidden, I can move the bikes, warp time the bikes around so that I can see their backfield, shoot their backfield, and then charge something. Like, there's a lot of play there. Additionally, the Noise Marines, they get to shoot when they die. So a really nice trick is I can put them out in a really exposed position, shoot twice with them, and then in my opponent's turn, they think they're sneaky and they re-establish their screens, they put out new units, and then they kill my Noise Marines. But when they do so, my Noise Marines can then kill the screens that they just set up in their own turn, which means my Terminators are free to drop where they want. So that's a really nifty trick with the Noise Marines. So a savvy opponent, and anybody who is attending the event, I hope you're not listening, because a savvy opponent will kill the bikes first, and they'll ignore the Noise Marines. Because if killing the Noise Marines essentially grants me another shooting phase. But yeah, so turn 1, these guys move out onto the objectives, do some shooting, kill some shit, all good. And then turn 2, I can start dropping in the Terminators. Now, the Terminators are only able to drop on turns 2 and 3, which means one of those turns I'm going to likely drop 2 units, and the other turn I'm going to drop the third. And the reason that you wouldn't do all 3 at once is because there's a couple of stratagems that you're going to want to use that you can only use on 1 unit at a time. So you want to try and use the stratagems turn 1, 2, and 3. So one of them is the shoot twice stratagem, which turn 1 I'd use on the Noise Marines or the bikes, and then turn 2 I'd use it on one of the Terminator units that drops, and then turn 3 I'd use it on the other Terminator unit that drops. So that gives me 3 turns of maximum shooting output. However, the reason that I brought 3 units of Terminators is because on the turn that you drop 2, you've actually got like a 75% chance based on my like practice rolls. This isn't mathematically calculated, but I rolled it out like maybe, I don't know, 60 or 70 times and found that most of the time, like 40 or 50 times, both units made the charge successfully, because there's a neat little trick that Emperor's Children can do where they've got one stratagem which everybody has, which allows you to re-roll the charge, and another stratagem that allows you to take any dice that you've rolled in a charge and turn it into a 6. So basically the idea is you go in, you drop your 2 units, you roll your charge on the first unit. If it fails, you CP re-roll it, and if that fails as well, you can then turn one of those dice into a 6 and pass. And the probability on that, making that pass, is in the high 90s, because you've got essentially 4 opportunities to roll a 3. And then if you roll a 3 and a fucking 1, you turn the 1 into a 6, and now it's a 9, and you make your 9-inch charge. So the first one drops down, he rolls his charge. If that succeeds, happy days. If it fails, you re-roll, and if that succeeds, happy days. But if that fails, you then use a CP to make it a pass by turning 1 into a 6, and happy days. So it's almost certain that first unit gets in, and then the next unit goes in and just goes for the 9-inch charge. But the thing is if the first unit makes the charge on the first roll, you can then do the re-roll or change to a 6 trick on the second unit. And if the first one goes in, fails the charge, and you re-roll it and they pass, you can then use the turn 1 to a 6 or any dice to a 6 trick on the second unit. So the probability of making the charges with 2 units is actually really high, which is amazingly powerful. And even if they don't pass, the goal would be that they drop down and they do a fuck ton of damage with their shooting anyway. So even if they fail their charge, like, you might just shoot the unit that's in combat, like that's in charge range, and just kill it. So you might not even want to make the charge. But assuming that you do, you can drop down, shoot target A, and then charge target B is always an option. Go in with your 2 charges. And then in combat they do some serious fucking damage. And then obviously the following turn 3, you drop down this Terminator unit, and hopefully by then you've blown up so much of their shit, their ability to screen out that third drop is really low. And then basically the reason that one of these units is all just combi bolters and the other one has 6 and then 5 combi melters is because then I drop the combi bolter unit and the combi melter unit down at the same time, and I use the stratagems to shoot twice with the combi melter unit. So every point that was spent upgrading the weapons of this unit was not as effectively spent as it would be if it was spent on one of the other units, because they're going to get to shoot twice, in theory. Which is why I went, the autocannons in the same unit as the melter guns in the same unit as all the shit that they have. So you drop one down. But there will be instances where if I'm versing like a horde army, I might actually choose to shoot twice with the combi bolter unit, because it gets 4 shots per Terminator, whereas these guys, they either get 2 shots plus 1 for the melter gun, so 3 shots, but at -1 to hit. But there's tons and tons of scenarios. Like, for example, a Plague Bearer Horde, you're already -1 to hit, so there's no downside there. So maybe in that situation you would shoot with the melter gun unit. But yeah, that's going to be a case-by-case scenario, that one. But when it comes to close combat now, so we've talked about the shooting damage that this list can do, the 120 shots from these guys. You can get a fuck ton of shots from the bikes, and then each one of these Terminator units drops down and does a fuck ton of shots. Like, this one can drop down and do 80 shots. These ones can drop down and do like 60 shots. That some of which are melter guns, like 12 melter gun shots can blow up a lot of shit. Like, it just puts so much hate out in the shooting phase. But then it also is very likely to make the charges. And then when it does make the charge, these Terminators go in with a ridiculous amount of attacks, because they've all got a lightning claw. So they've got 2 attacks on their profile, plus 1 for shock assault, plus 1 for the lightning claw. So they're going 4 attacks each. And then the icon of excess, which is in every unit except for the cultists and the sorcerers, obviously, that triggers death to the false emperor on a 5+. So what that essentially means is that every 5 to hit that these boys make is going to be generating an additional attack. And on top of that, if they're prescienced, it'll be every 4+ to hit. So these guys go in with 4 attacks, hitting on 2s with prescience, and then any 4+ gives them another attack. So on average, out of those 4 attacks, they're going to get 6 hits. Or 5 to 6 hits, which is obviously fucking bananas. They hit harder than the World Eaters Terminators. So with all of those hits, and then there's also a stratagem that I can use where every time they kill a model, they get to make another attack. So if you go into something that's like ridiculous Necron hordes or something like that, you can go, cool, not only am I going to hit... Well, the Necron horde, I don't get the exploding 4s, because they're not Imperium, but you can make it so that for every Necron that you kill, you get to make another attack, which is also pretty spicy. So that's the sort of the combat damage that these guys do, and it's obviously, it's strength 4, re-rolling all wounds, -2 from the lightning claws. It's pretty spicy. These Noise Marines can also do pretty good in combat. Like, you look at them and they don't look like a combat threat, but they go in with 3 attacks on the charge, and then I can obviously get exploding 4s on them as well if I want to. I can also get when somebody dies, they get to make another attack. And also, the thing about this army that's really worth considering is that the whole army gets to fight first in the fight phase. So if they charge me, I essentially get free CP interrupts on every unit. So instead of it going, they fight with everything that charged, and then I fight, or I can spend like CP interrupt with one unit, I actually get to interrupt with everything. So they charge me with 6 units, I get to go, okay, you fight with one, I fight with one. You fight with one, I fight with one. So it actually makes this unit really scary to just engage in combat with. And everything from the bikers, they all have chainswords, so they all get a fuck ton of attacks. The Terminators get a fuck ton of attacks. The Emperor's Children, the Noise Marines, they get a fuck ton of attacks. Like, it's a fucking scary combat army, and it's going to shred people to death, but it's also going to fucking blast them to death as well. So I'm fucking keen. I think this list is going to be a ton of fun. It's also really tough, because the bikes and the Noise Marines that start on the table are T5 with 3 up, so I can put a couple of them in cover. I know the bikes don't get cover, but so the bikes probably want to be hidden out of line of sight. And then the Noise Marines, if they can be hidden, they want to as well. If not, they want to be in cover. So that's all T5 with good saves. And then the Terminators drop down, which are all 2-up armor saves, which is, for a lot of people, like a 2-up armor save that's in cover can be really hard to deal with. So there's a lot of defensive power. And then also I have Delightful Agonies, which is a psychic power that gives one of my units a 5-up Feel No Pain. So I could theoretically go, okay, turn 1, I'm going to slingshot the bikes in with Warp Time and Delightful Agony. So they're going in with Toughness 5, 3-up save, and a 5-up Feel No Pain. Or I could go, you know what, the Noise Marines are going to win me this game because they do so much damage in their shooting. I want to be shooting with them multiple times, and 2 damage might be primo in that matchup. So I can go, cool, I'm going to put Delightful Agonies on them. And then as those sort of things wilter down, the Terminators, I can then just put the 5-up Feel No Pain on them, which is also really good. The other good thing about having the 3 units of Terminators is if my opponent goes first, and let's just say they have a whole ton of like barrage weapons or something like that, and they just go in hard and they kill like my bikes and my Noise Marines turn 1, and now my characters are vulnerable, I can actually drop the Terminators down to re-establish that screen, drop 1 unit of Terminators backfield to re-establish that screen, and then throw the other 2 units in forward and punch back. So having that extra unit of Terminators in there, it just means if there's like a midfield objective that I really want, I have a unit in there that's really hearty, really sturdy, and able to hold that objective for me. So yeah, that's the rough outline of the list. Put it together and painted it in like 3 or 4 days. I had these Terminators at the front here. They were already painted. All I had to do was put the lightning claws on them, which I'm pretty happy with these lightning claws as well. This is like an aftermarket style kit where, like, I mean, it's done very ghetto because who knows how long lightning claws will be good for. But it's like it just clips onto the back of their fist, and now it's a lightning claw. Some of them have legitimate lightning claws that I had in my bits box. And then some of them are obviously, like I showed earlier, are power fists with forks on them. But I think it all comes together to be a pretty good-looking army, especially from this distance. When you get up close, you're like, what the shit is that? But when you're looking from a reasonable distance, I think it looks fine. So yeah, I painted all the Terminators last night. I was up till very late last night painting Terminators. Painting the other 2 squads, that is. Painted all the bikes. And some of the bikes are literally like, this is like, I didn't have any bikes. Or, I didn't have the bikes. Didn't have these 2 units of Terminators. Didn't have this unit of Noise Marines. About, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago. And I didn't buy anything. So all of this stuff is things that turns out I just had enough bits in my bits box to put it together. Like I had some old busted up Terminators that I got in a big buy swap sell deal. All these guys, they were $1 each in a buy swap sell deal. The bikes I got off of a few different buy swap sell deals. You can see some of them are obviously fucking Space Marine bikes, like Imperial bikes. But I was like, nah, it's a Chaos guy riding it. It's fine. And like a few of them, they didn't have bodies on them. So I've just like got a normal guy. Like that one had legs on it, obviously. But there's a few of them where you can see that I've just, where's an example? Like this guy here. Where I've just gotten a normal Chaos Space Marine body and just shoved him on it. And like, that's a Bloodletter's arm, because I needed something to be holding the steering wheel. And then the other hand is just like a bolt pistol arm that's got the bolt pistol ripped out of it. And like, you can see the guns on the front are just, they're not even the bolters that come with the bike. Because it was the worst, like, it was almost a throwaway Chaos Space Marine army that I bought, where almost every unit was just unusably bad. Like, the Terminators were unusably bad, but I sort of did almost like a Pimp My Ride style renovation project and got it up to this standard, which I'm really happy with. And then I decided to paint, like, I repainted these cultists so that they'd be cohesive. Gave them like the gold helmets and the gold shoulders and stuff, so that it tied in with the gold, black, and bone color scheme of this army, with the purple, splash color. So yeah, that's more or less the list. I'll give you guys some updates throughout the event if I can remember, if I can be fucked, and let you know how it goes. I haven't looked at any of the lists yet that I'll be going up against, so I might have a quick squiz through them tonight and just see if there's anything in there that I'm particularly scared of. I know what a couple of my mates are bringing to the event, and I'm pretty confident in those matchups, so that's always a good place to start. But yeah, alright, so thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you do the old smash the like button, subscribe, all that good shit. You know what to do. Most of you that are watching this probably have already done it. But yeah, let's build this. I'll put this video up on my YouTube. I'll put it up on my website. I've got a website now, which is just blog for the blood god at .weebly.com. So blog for the blood god.weebly.com. And that's going to be my new sort of portal to all of my content, just so that all of my YouTube content and all of my Facebook content and all of my Instagram content and all of my commission work content, everything is going to be in the same place. One place to get all your blog for the blood god content. I'm going to be doing tutorials. I've got a few tutorials up on there already. I'm going to be doing tactics articles. I'm basically going to try and create my own little robust... It's going to be a one-man show, this website. So it's not going to be like Goonhammer or anything like that, where you're getting like premium as fuck content released regularly, but I'm going to be trying to make some good timeless content on there that you can always look at, and it's always going to be interesting. So make sure you check that out. Follow me on Facebook, like on YouTube, don't be a shit cunt, and I'll talk to you soon. Ta-das.
Blog for the blood god.